And it's Wednesday, and we live. What's going on?
Sir? What's good? What's good? What's going on?
You hearing anything funky as of yet?
No, I'm good right now.
We'll wait to see when our guest comes in the room how it pans out, and then we'll take it from there. Man, so what's going on, brother?
Not much. Same old, man. Just enjoying the weather, taking it day by day. What's good with you? Getting any sleep?
Indian summer. Like I was telling you,
don't get canceled.
Yeah, right. No, a word. Can you say that?
Yeah.
Every day when I do the overnights, I wake up at 4:00, like just I'm up, and I don't know why. Just like something just wakes me up, and I get up and eat, and I try to go to sleep again, and it's like, yeah, you're not going back to sleep. It's retarded.
We have them body clocks, man. When you start doing something habitually, you start, your body knows. The brain is something else, man.
For some, not for everybody. Salute to the brother, Mr. Joseph Estrella. Good evening.
What's going on?
Yeah, man. So tonight we got a guest from the neighborhood. It says going to welcome Mr. Dominick P. And I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Is it LaRuffa? LaRuffa? Okay. Mr. Dominick P. LaRuffa Jr.
We can't call him Tasty Dom. We can't call him Tasty Dom.
No, I am not doing that.
Yeah.
Salute to my little sister, Zenobia Mercado, and my two sonfus, Asa and Josiah. I see you. Salute to Mr. Mark David Valentin of New York City Hot Wings. We see you, brother.
Yes, yes, Mark. Opening tonight. Let's go Knicks.
Oh, tonight's the season opener?
Yeah, they play the Celtics.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going to tell you like this, Mark. My brother's going to be rushing us off the air because he's going to want to watch the game. I know that for sure.
I respect Dom's time.
Yeah, right. And for all the first-time viewers, if you could go over to YouTube and make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. We're trying to hit our 1,000 subscriber mark, and we're working on that strong. So we would appreciate everybody if you just took 2 minutes out of your time and go like and subscribe. So again, tonight we have from Brooklyn, Besonhurst, Brooklyn, actually, Mr. Dominick P. LaRuffa Jr.
The Hurst.
Yeah. And he's going to be giving us his story, what it was like growing up in the neighborhood, and everything in between, man. I think it's going to be a great conversation. Should be interesting, to hear what it was like for him and his perspective growing up. But let me see. First, I want to share something with everybody. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can get this squared away. Where is it? So everybody,
surprise, motherfucker. Surprise, motherfucker.
Let's all give a little salute right now and a head nod to my partner, Mr. Selly Sasson, who just started his venture, and it's called Just the Tip with Sasson. Now, Just the Tip, pause, is a sports segment that Mr. Sasson has developed, where he's going to be sitting down and speaking to different sports figures and different topics within the sports world. I think there's even you added a little gambling portion in there too.
We try. We don't want people betting their houses and blaming us, but we try.
So basically, it's called Just the Tip, and it's everything sports. So look out for the posts on that. It'll be on the set page, of course. And Selly's going to be bringing people on, man. It's going to be great discussions with a lot of people in front and in behind the scenes. So there's going to be so many different personalities. You definitely want to give it a check. Make sure you subscribe to the Just the Tip with Sasson on YouTube and show the support, man. My guy's doing his thing, and we want to support him and make sure that this movement, gains traction. So just check it out. Just the Tip with Sasson. And it's a good one, man. It's just starting out, but things are moving and shaking already for him. So make sure you guys check that out. There's going to be it's random dates, right? So it's nothing like one day out the week.
I appreciate that, Mr. A. You helped me a lot. Like I said the other day, yourself, Eddie Mata, a lot of just everyone, and within reach has helped me so much in trying to develop this channel and get and improve it. I do it Monday, Thursday, or Friday. Depends on what the guest and
Have available.
Saturday. It's open forum basically for them as far as what date works for them.
Right.
But Wednesday we rock the set 6145, and then I'm trying to build that other channel on those other days, as far as like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Depends on what works for them. So it'll be running through the set 6145 on Facebook also, because we family. This is a family venture, and
That's right.
you guys are our family. Also, the community out there that watches us. So we need your support. It's like this is your baby. You're gonna watch this baby grow.
That's right. So everybody get in on it. Just the tip, right? Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Just the tip. Just for a second, just to see how it feels.
Yeah.
Just the tip. Just for a second, just to see how it feels.
One of my favorite movie quotes. So check it out. Just the tip with Sasson. Also, Sel, I know there's a fight coming up. We got a lot of different, events coming up down the pipeline. So can you give the audience what's happening with this right here?
Yeah, my man Corey Epps, he was on Jersey Licious back in the days. I don't know if you remember the Reality World, one of those Reality World shows, and he's fighting in the Showboat in Atlantic City. He's fighting what's the guy's name? Josh. I forgot the guy from the Real World. I'll get the name. Yeah, Josh. I forgot. It's Josh Ramos or something. He's Spanish cat from the Real World. So they're fighting at the Showboat. What is it? November
6th.
November 6th. Yeah, at the Showboat Atlantic City. So,
and it's going to be on Showtime.
No, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Showtime, 8 p.m.
Let's go.
Hey, listen, check it out. It's going to be on Showtime, and you guys might see something familiar when he enters the ring. So make sure, let's make sure you check that out. So I hope everybody's strapped in. We're going to start the show and bring on our guests. So let's run this track real quick and get it started. You ready, Sel?
Yeah.
Let's go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mr. A.
Sally Sasson in the building.
And this is the set 6145. Real people telling real stories. Tonight, no different. The set welcomes Mr. Dominick P. LaRuffa Jr. to the show. We're going to be having an interesting conversation about what it was like growing up in Besonhurst, Brooklyn, what got him started in business, his athletic accolades around Brooklyn. And this might bring back some memories from some of the guests here that are familiar with these items, if you would. So let's see. I think he's ready. So let's set this all up. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to keep mangling his name. LaRuffa?
Let him clear it up.
All right.
Call him Dom. 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 That's
Dom.
That's what I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the set welcomes Mr. Don P. LaRuffa Jr. to the set.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Dom.
How are you? Can you hear me?
Can hear you clearly.
All right. So with that segue of Sally saying, let him clear it up, I do need to apologize. When you had asked me for my full name, I gave you my full name, like I was filling out a business app. My son actually goes by Dom LaRuffa Jr. And he has a fairly involved media career, both in Broadway and television and movies. So I wouldn't want somebody to Google and cross us up. So well, let's cut the junior off of me and give it to my son, Dom LaRuffa Jr.
Okay.
And one other thing really quick, if you would allow me to, I want to give a special birthday shout out to Jack Perone. Jackie Boy is 25 today. He's a great kid. and he's one of my best friend's sons. And I just wanted to say happy birthday, Jackie.
All right, happy birthday to Jackie.
Happy born day, Jackie.
Yeah, man. So LaRuffa, correct?
That's correct. Anything, LaRuffa, any way you want to say it is fine.
So let's start at the beginning, Dom.
Community hospital.
Community.
How much did you weigh?
Yeah, right.
And they closed the maternity ward 6 weeks after I was born. So
Wow.
my parents told me it was because of me. So
Oh man. So were you born and raised in the same neighborhood, or were you born in one neighborhood and transplanted?
I was born and raised in Besonhurst.
Okay.
I had a business opportunity at the ripe old age of 18 and a half to take over a store out in Levittown, Long Island. I went to Levittown. From there, I had another opportunity in Atlanta, and that was at 19. And then I came back at 22 and opened the original Tasty Chicken on 17th and 86th in Brooklyn. So I stayed in Bensonhurst and Bergen Beach for most of those years. And then around 2005 or so, I moved out to Jackson, New Jersey, when I had full custody of my children, and I was trying to control them through high school. And it was easier to do in New Jersey than it was in Brooklyn.
Facts.
Wow. So at 18, you're running your own business?
Well, no, actually, I was the senior manager to actually the gentleman Mike that I just mentioned. Our management career started at Chuck E. Cheese on Bay Parkway in Brooklyn. You younger guys, Sally, probably had birthday parties there.
Probably.
And I had I really wanted an opportunity to run my own store. So that opportunity came at another location that the owners of Chuck E. Cheese had in Levittown, Long Island. So I went out there as a manager also. But then in Atlanta, one of the partners from Chuck E. Cheese moved down to Atlanta to open up 3 Bojangles chicken and biscuit restaurants, and gave me a percentage ownership to come down and help him run them. So that was my first foray. And then in 1988, when we decided to open Tasty Chicken back in Bensonhurst, I was very fortunate. A gentleman named Joe Giraldi and John Rocco owned Tasty Bagels. And Joe and Joe's dad were friends with my mom. Long story short, they were looking to open a chicken store. I was back in Brooklyn for my sister's wedding. I went and spoke with them. We really connected. They had Tasty Bagels. I partnered with them in Tasty Chicken. And, I guess the rest, they say, is history or was history. There was a lot of different intonations over the years, but I truly owe a debt of gratitude to Joe and John from Tasty Bagels for giving me the opportunity to be their partner at such a young age in the chicken store and start that business.
Wait, make me understand something, Dominic. How does a kid of 18 get the discernment and the understanding of what it takes to run a business so early in life? Like, were your parents like business owners and you sort of grew up in that environment, or was it just
Not
something
in the least.
All right, so something that you were just in and adapted to?
Yeah, it's actually a great question, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version is that everybody kind of needs an arena where they feel comfortable or where they feel like they can do well or they can be recognized. And as a later adult, that became sports for me, like you had mentioned with some of the neighborhood leagues and stuff. But early on, it wasn't. I was slight. I was small. I didn't develop athletically till I was older. And when I started working at Chuck E. Cheese, I got an opportunity to become a manager, and I realized that it was just something, let's just say, that I was good at. I think mostly because I didn't know what good or bad was. I just kind of shot from the hip, and it just I just used common sense, like just I guess stuff that you learn growing up, quote unquote street knowledge. Common sense. Hard day's work. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Work hard, show up early, leave late, all those things. And it just kind of clicked for me, and it was also a segue for me because I was very challenged in school, and I didn't realize why. And then later on, as an adult, 28, 29 years old, I went for some evaluatory tests and found out that I was dyslexic and had a learning disability, and that's why I didn't take well to school. I guess I was always bright enough, but I just didn't fit the school box. So the management, kind of allowed me an arena that didn't require me to fill out a syllabus. I don't work well with syllabuses,
But
So
hold on.
Dom,
Yeah, go ahead, so.
so were you the mascot at any point in the Chuck E. Cheese arena?
Pretty funny.
You ever dress up and dance?
I actually, there were several characters there. One time we had a bunch of birthday parties scheduled, and the kid that was supposed to be in the costume didn't show up, so I had to go and do the Chuck E. Cheese costume for an entire Saturday. And that place, I don't know if you guys were ever in Chuck E. Cheese in Brooklyn back in the day, but it was a monster store. It was a 30,000 square foot store. We had over 300 employees. We were always vying for the number one spot in the country. At the time, Chuck E. Cheese had about 225 locations, and it was always us and Anchorage, Alaska, that were vying for the number one spot nationally. Well, so anyway, I had to do the costume for one whole day. It was about 80 birthday parties throughout an entire Saturday, and honestly, I learned the respect for these people that go into these costumes.
Right. Like, we need to give them a raise.
You can, when you see people like Disney, these other places, like if you take your kids places where there's a character, pull the guy to the side, slip him some money, tell him he's great, because it's torture in those costumes. Torture.
I'm just trying to understand, and I wanted to circle back to what Dom said earlier. This is like the second or third guest that we've had on that speaks about having dyslexia or learning.
Yeah, when Whip said that during his interview,
Yeah.
I was like, obviously, you know from the interview, whatever, that we know each other a long time, and I never knew that. Like, I never knew that about him. Obviously, he didn't know it about me, and I think, and people automatically think dyslexia means you just transpose numbers or transpose letters. It's much more than that. Like, there's all different versions of that, and like, I have trouble with my right and my left. I do transpose letters, but the biggest thing is I truly can't read. Meaning, like, I don't know if I'm describing it right, but like, it hurts to read. Like, I can get about a page, and then like I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. And there was no way to articulate this to teachers or parents or people of consequence, at least not when I went to school. Based on where understanding is now, it's like I went to school in the Middle Ages, and I went to a fairly progressive school.
They would have hopped you on medicine nowadays.
Right. Yeah. And, I'm glad that didn't happen either, but I went to Edward R. Murrow for high school, which at the time was a highly progressive and, application school and whatever. And you would have thought that they would have picked up on it, but I guess I was very good at hiding it. So I don't want to blame other people for not picking up on it. But I kind of wish somebody would have, because not that I regret not having a formal education, but it would have been nice to know that there were options and that there just wasn't something wrong with me,
Well, the reason why I'm pointing that out is because I almost feel like in the conversation that we've had with Whip and I forget who the other person was at the moment, but in the conversations we had with them, we didn't really touch on how your brain adapts to those situations, because you obviously got through school. And Murrow was, like you said, a pretty progressive school. But
Yeah.
in that time period, before TV and radio, when you went to school, they really wouldn't have been able to like really take care of you, so to speak.
No, you're right. And like I said, they did have some resources, but Murrow was much more geared towards the accelerated student.
Right.
And they also had a really inclusive program for highly compromised students. Like the in-betweener, let's say, like me, like really slipped through the cracks. But I think the thing that helped me with that, and really has helped me throughout life, is I guess I have what you would call a photographic memory, or I'm very good at remembering what I hear. And maybe that was adaptive, but and maybe that just happened without me realizing it. Like, I used to, when I had to, like back in the day, if we had to type reports, I would torture my mother. She would sit at the table with me, and I would dictate to her, and she would type, like physically type on a boom, 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 boom typewriter. And right, and she thought that I was just being
Ding.
lazy, and I would wait till the last minute and throw the pressure on her. But meanwhile, like I was just panicked and didn't know what to do, and then knew that if I cried and panicked, she'd help me.
Oh, wow. I think the point that I'm trying to make to you is that in all the instances that we've had guests that have, bared themselves saying that they had dyslexia or some form of disability, you also demonstrate that your brain starts pushing strength in other areas to make you functionable, right?
Sure, I think that's very true. I think humans are highly adaptive.
Right. So the photographic memory and things of that nature, like I wish I had that right now because I can't remember what color socks I had on today. You know
what?
I mean?
It's both a blessing and a curse because the memory is great, but it also makes it more difficult to let go of painful experiences also. So it's not always blissful, but you learn, again, you learn how to manage, I guess, what God gives you, so to speak.
Dom, so Edward R. Murrow, right? You take a
Yes.
test to go there, right?
Correct.
So what's the is it a mosaic? Is it mostly Italian? Is it what kind of nationalities are in that school?
At Edward R. Murrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
And where's it located?
It's funny you say that. It's on East 16th and Avenue L. And I went to St. Finbar Parochial School in Besonhurst, right on Beth Avenue. And I would have passed a lie detector test telling you at the end of 8th grade that the entire world was Roman Catholic and the only two choices were Italian and Irish. Like, that's how small my world was. Like, that's how small the block in that community was. And then here I go and I get, it took 3 buses for me to go to Murrow. And I enter school, and boy, oh boy, were there not very many Roman Catholic Italians there.
Right.
That's East Flatbush, of course not.
Yeah, but you know what? It was there was because it was a progressive education-based school. Even at that time, I would say if I had to go down the line, PC aside, I would go ethnicities or groups would be Jewish, Asian, Black, Spanish, everything else, and I fell into everything else.
How did that shape your understanding?
He was an other.
Yeah, he was definitely an other. How do you think that shaped your understanding and your dealings with people, especially being so young, and being not sheltered necessarily, but you're in your own world?
No, sheltered is a great word. I'll tell you. So I had a unique experience starting school. Like I said, I had to take 3 forms of transportation to get there. It evolved to being 3 buses, but at first it was 2 buses and a train. So my first day, I do the 2 buses and a train thing. I get mugged on the train going to school because I made sure I was prominently displaying my rope chain because, like, I was an aspiring cuisine from 86th Street. So I get my rope chain ripped off
With
my
the
neck.
tank top and
Exactly. And then
Taco meat.
at the end of that first day, I go to use the bathroom downstairs, and I got mugged in the bathroom at knife point, and they took a little ring that I had that my grandmother had given me for communion. So
the pinky
I
ring. You had the
opened my
pinky
eyes
ring,
really
Dom?
quick that Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. But you know what? I when you say the sheltered thing, because I didn't know I was sheltered. Like, I thought I was, let's say, sharp, by Bensonhurst standards, and then as soon as you go outside of Bensonhurst, you realize you're about as sharp as a marble. And but what I realized was that, and I had a great experience that day, even though I got mugged twice. The dean of the school brought me into his office, and he was a big old Irish tough guy named Mr. McHugh. And basically he said to me, he goes, listen, this is your fault. He said, you're on the train showing a rope chain. You got a ring on. You go into a bathroom by yourself. What's wrong with you? Where do you come from? How do you do that? I came from a community where we didn't lock our doors. I came from a community where, you left your bike on the sidewalk and you came out and it was there. I didn't know what a key to a door was till I was about 15. It was a completely different world. So he was right. But it woke me up real quick. So I took responsibility. Based on him, I said, okay, you're right. I should have known how to ride the train. I should have known how to do this. I should have known how to do that. They picked on me. And it just so happens that I got mugged on the train by Spanish guys, or what back in the day anyone who was Spanish just called them Puerto Rican, and I got mugged in the bathroom by black guys. But rather than to make that the automatic hatred point, I chose to look at it as they didn't mug me because I was white. They mugged me because I was like a deer in the headlights and I was easy prey. They mugged me because they could clearly see that I was out of my element. Not because I was white, because I was stupid and I was a clown. So I took responsibility and I said, all right, let me figure this out. I'll be better. I'll be smarter. And I never got mugged or robbed again. But it was a great first day.
Dom, so when you went home, how was it handled there?
I got yelled at. That I was stupid. Same thing basically that the dean told me. When in my house with my dad especially, rest in peace. He's actually just this was just 21 years recently for him. He was rough. He was rough. He was demanding, and no matter what I did, no matter what happened to me, it was my fault. So, and I guess in a way that was good. Like even from physical discipline, like if I got in trouble in school or I got hit by the nuns or by a teacher in school, when I got home, they wouldn't say, oh, who hit you? Who this? They'd hit me for getting hit in school, and then call up the school and tell them to hit me again. So,
I don't think anybody,
it's a completely different world.
I don't think anybody in the room, maybe there's a few people in the room, but I know if any young folk are watching, they're like, what? You got hit at school by the teachers?
Ooh.
They don't know nothing about that.
Especially, and it wasn't just the nuns. Like in St. Finbar, it was game on. But again, whether it was nuns, whether it was cops, whether it was authority figures, I mean, by today's standards, my father would be serving 5 life sentences for child abuse. But I deserved every beating I ever got. I was obnoxious. I was a wise ass. I never knew how to not have a comeback. I never knew how to not try to get the last word in. I always had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. So I deserved every beating I ever got.
How did going to the school over those years, because going to high school, coming out of the surroundings that you came from, and then being thrust into that sort of environment, how did it shape your perception or understanding on, one, how to deal with people, and two, how you viewed people? Because now you're not, you're basically at home when you're in a parochial school, but now you come out and you're going to East Flatbush, and this is what, the early 80s?
Yeah, it was more Midwood, let's say Midwood, East Flatbush border. Yeah. But to your point, people, you guys remember, the 70s into the 80s in New York was ugly. Like the pre-Giuliani New York was ugly. That people forget, like as early. So I started that school in 1980, 77, 78. We still got gas lines. We still got odd and even license plates to go and get gas. Like the Times Square, you died if you went to Times Square. It was like, it was New York was the Wild West. So it was. I think for me, it was wonderful in the sense that it opened me up to a bunch of other cultures, people that I would have never met. It certainly took me out of the Besonhurst element, fairly quickly. I made friends with people in Park Slope. I made friends with people in Sunset Park. I made friends with people in Mill Basin. Like I made friends with people in different places that would have never happened had I went, let's say, the New Utrecht, Lafayette, Severian tract. That kind of would have, kept me, with the same people. But I say those lessons are probably more retrospective for me, because at the time I didn't embrace all that had to offer. I just tried to get back to PS 200 on Bath Avenue and Bay 22nd Street as quickly as I could. Like I arranged my schedule to where I could try to have, as many free periods at the end of the day, because I had to get back to the park, because I was not good at any of the sports. So if I wasn't there first, I didn't get picked, so I had to get back to the neighborhood, so it was, and then, that changed somewhere along the line. But the first few years, I wish I would have realized the opportunities that Morrow gave me. But retrospectively, I learned a lot of lessons, especially about other cultures, especially about, just that again, that the whole world wasn't Roman Catholic and that the only two choices were an Italian and Irish. And actually, the first friend I made in high school was a kid named Darius Rogers, black kid, and it to me, like, he seemed just as scared as I was, and he seemed just as timid as I was. So we kind of just found each other, and we remained friends throughout. He unfortunately passed away from cancer at a very early age, at like 23 or 24 years old. But it was for me, it was just great to just make friends, meet different people, see different perspectives. But the thing that really taught me that was moving to Atlanta. When I moved to Atlanta at 19 years old, that's what really opened my eyes at how much of a microcosm Besonhurst or Brooklyn was, and what a big world there was out there, and how they did not like me down there.
What?
Oh, let me tell you, Atlanta in 1986. So I roll into Gwinnett County, Georgia, in let's call it May-ish, June of '86. The last time I thought about the Civil War was sixth grade social studies. They were still fighting it, and an Italian from Brooklyn was as bad as anything else they didn't like. Right. So, and I had never experienced that. It was new to me, and you realize, and especially at that time, Atlanta was starting to be a real growing city. So it had a lot of transients, had a lot of people moving from all over the country. So it wasn't like going from a neighborhood to a neighborhood, even in another state. It was like going from a tribal community to, let's call it, a domestic or almost global destination, because everyone was moving in and out of Atlanta. So I was in Atlanta for a very short time, only a little bit over 2 years before I had the opportunity to come back and open the business in Brooklyn. But those 2 years really taught me a lot about, just how the rest of the world functions and how the sun doesn't rise and set on Bath Avenue in Brooklyn.
Dom, so the question I have is, did you go to school for business? Like, when you started doing these business ventures, you just went in head first and you learned on the fly? Is that what you're telling us?
Went in head. Well, again, the first venture in Atlanta, in Bojangles, was part of a stringent, franchise group. Bojangles was a growing chicken and biscuits franchise at the time. They actually still rule the Carolinas. Like, if you drive down into the Carolinas, like people like McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken. I see the commercials all the time, like the college games. And the only formal business training, let's say, was to be part of the franchise group. I had to go to Bojangles University in Charlotte, North Carolina, for 3 weeks. So that's the totality of the formal schooling. So I got some education, let's say, in being part of a franchise group. But as far as anything else goes, it really was, let's say, on the job training. And when I came back to partner up with Joe and John from Tasty Bagels and Tasty Chicken, they had already been running Tasty Bagels for about 6 years. Joe Giraldi was also a New York State court officer. His partner, John Rocco, had a career prior to that in film and development in Manhattan. So they brought a lot to the table, and they, collectively, we learned a lot together. But I was fortunate throughout to always be with, let's say, mentor type of people. And the gentleman who made me the partner in Atlanta, his name was Leon Blumenthal. He was actually a Holocaust survivor from Munich, Germany. And he was, before he came on at Chuck E. Cheese and then decided to venture off into Bojangles himself, he was the first international vice president for Burger King Corp. So he was the man that directed the opening of all of the Burger Kings throughout Europe. So spending 2.5 years with him, literally almost in the same apartment in Atlanta, was literally like going to an Ivy League education in business and the world. This is a man that was opening franchises in Europe in the 70s, and early 80s. So I was very fortunate. Every step along the way, and all of the other business ventures that I found my way into or that found me, there was always an older gentleman, or in some cases, ladies or their wives that were involved also. I had the benefit of being exposed to many, many different older people that gave me the benefit of their experience, but also allowed me some autonomy to make my own mistakes. And I made a lot of mistakes. I can tell you that.
Is Tasty Chicken like the ingredients? Is Bojangles ingredients in there? Like also?
That's great. You ask great questions, Sally. Bojangles.
Our Spanish and brothers love the chicken now.
Yeah, and we made a good product. Everybody loved our chicken, and especially when we first opened, like people would say to me, like, well, what are you doing? Open a chicken store in an Italian neighborhood. Italians don't eat fried chicken. Blah 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 blah. Meanwhile, we had lines out the door. But it was I loved Roy Rogers' fried chicken back in the day. And I liked the Bojangles recipe. So at the time, I had a friend that used to work with us at Chuck E. Cheese that was a manager at Roy Rogers. So I had him borrow a bag of their chicken breading mix, and I borrowed a bag of chicken breading mix from Bojangles, and we brought it to a place called First Spice out in New Jersey, and said, we want this blend. And we blended the two of them together. They gave us a few different samples, and we came up with our own quote-unquote flavor for the breading and the mix for Tasty Chicken. But it was a hybrid of Bojangles and Roy Rogers. Copyright infringements not impending.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just going to say the statutes of limitations have possibly expired.
Yeah, I think so.
Way to go.
From 1988 till now, I think we're good.
Way to go, Sally, incriminating this guy.
My bad.
Sally could do no wrong in my
That
eyes.
was the bomb place over there.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was.
Yeah, it actually just closed. It had a 31-year run. It just the flagship store always was the one in Besonhurst. At our height, we had 6 locations, but the Besonhurst location remained open until December 31st, 2019, and I had actually sold it in 2011 to I'll call him. We always referred to each other as cousins. It was this gentleman named John DiPietro, but he came to work for me when he was 13 years old and worked throughout, and then eventually bought the store from me. Like I sold the store to him. And he had a nice little 9-year run also. But, the world changed, the neighborhood changed, a lot of things changed. It really wasn't anybody's fault. We just, we had our run. And I'm very grateful to that neighborhood because it gave me, a lot of autonomy to raise my children. It gave me the ability to participate in the community. We always sponsored teams. We always, donated to organizations. We employed so many different people in the neighborhood. Basically, it was funny. Like we had a lot of delivery drivers. Like Tasty Chicken had a rockin' delivery business back in the day, and all the football guys and stuff. They would all drive deliveries when they were saving for their wedding, and then they'd leave, and then they'd come back when they got divorced to try to help pay the child support.
There was no DoorDash. You would have been all right back then.
Yeah, but basically, if you ran down a list of like Dyker Park players, one way or the other, they all drove deliveries of Tasty Chicken at one time or another. And then for a while, we were known as Not Just Chicken. So people from other neighborhoods that were in Mill Basin and Gravesend knew it as Not Just Chicken. But one way or the other, it was the same group, the same thing. I'll say we had a 31-year run. It was great, and I'm very thankful to every single person that ever patronized any of our restaurants.
So, speaking of the neighborhood and the community, being that you grew up there and had business ventures there, you basically were, given firsthand experience to see the changes that came throughout time. The 70s and 80s, as you said, were very different in New York City.
Absolutely.
And a lot going on around the city that sort of made things difficult, if you would. So, basing your childhood up until, like, let's say the 90s, the mid to late 90s, What was life like in Bensonhurst, and how drastic were the changes with the landscape or the people that were living there? And how did the neighborhood acclimate to those changes?
Wow, this is a great topic. I know we only have a limited amount of time, but could become like a Ken Burns documentary. But I'll say early on, if we go, let's say, into the 70s, into the 80s, I was also very fortunate in the sense that my mom, who's still alive, still on 19th Avenue, still doing her thing every day. She's been compromised with some health issues as of late. So I love you, Ma. I hope you're feeling better today. But they're going to end up naming a street after her in Bensonhurst. Like, that's how involved she is in the community. And I didn't know it early on.
She's not a Karen, right, Dom? No.
Was that?
I said she's not a Karen, right?
No. She's.
I'm joking. Go ahead,
she's the
brother.
furthest thing in the world from the Karen, but the furthest. But she is an Eileen. Well, first of all, I was crazy, so she couldn't leave me with anyone. I was legitimately crazy as a kid, so she used to have to drag me everywhere. So she got very involved early on in politics, in the community, in the homeschool association, the 62nd precinct, like all the neighborhood organizations. And the reason why I say this is, so I was dragged around literally from, like, let's call it like 1973 on. So I'm born in 66. So by 73, I'm 7-8 years old. I'm involved in everything with my mother. Like the gentleman that I mentioned before, the Giraldis, they were one of the original founding members of the Bensonhurst Volunteer Ambulance Service, as was my mom. So, like, I got shown political campaigns, I got shown volunteerism, I got shown stuff in the neighborhood. Like, I was literally like my mother's sidekick, kicking and screaming, but sidekick. So back then, the community was really great. It was especially anchored around St. Finbar. It was a very, very strong parish. Every mass was packed on a Sunday, all sports programs, community center. So the Bensonhurst community really was a great community. And obviously, I'm putting aside any of the old stereotypes or any of the things of, how, let's just say, one-dimensional it may have been. For our time in our world, it was a wonderful community in the sense that it was a great community experience. We were safe, we were happy, we had everything we needed in like a little 8x8 block area. 3 movie theaters, 2 bowling alleys, shopping on 86th Street, basically everything you could have possibly needed. And I used the line of delineation as 1985, and I've always used that because for me that was two major things happened: the real beginning of the crack epidemic, and the onset of, let's say, the PC, or the start of computers. Where like we had computers in Murrow. Like I said, it was a progressive school, and those two things in different ways changed the world. So when the crack epidemic happened, that really changed the Bensonhurst landscape forever, because what we would consider to be traditional organized crime, whatever the activities may be, which some people considered somewhat harmless, gambling, numbers, stuff like that, whatever, like all the communities that we grew up in. Not that it was harmless, but compared to dealing crack, it was harmless. Crack came along, and it really it changed everything. That's when we went through a rash of really terrible things in the 80s leading into the 90s in Bensonhurst. Kids started dealing drugs, started dealing crack, money came fast, cousins were killing cousins, brothers were killing brothers. It was ugly. It was really ugly. So for me, it changed at or around 1985, and it never went back. It really never went back to, it was almost like Bensonhurst prior to 1985 was like the Andy Griffith Show, only with sweatsuits and Cadillacs and pinky rings. It was very small town.
And Planet Rock, don't forget that.
Was that?
And Planet Rock, don't forget that one.
Like the song Soul Sonic Force.
Yeah, you guys love that song.
Oh, we of course we love that. You know, it's in our skippies and our capizios. You know, doing the kick dancing. Come on, our Smith's pants and the Chinese slippers. You know.
Nobody. Hold on, Dom. Don't move. Hold on.
Uh-oh. What portal did I just open up?
No. I'm going to tell you now. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining the show, I'm your host, Mr. A.
Sally Sanson in the building.
And this is the set 6145. Real people telling real stories. As always, tonight we have Mr. Dominick LaRuffa. And I'm not going to add the junior. Telling a story.
No, please. My son needs that billing. He needs all the help he can get, because being right now in the entertainment industry that he's well entrenched in, being heterosexual, white, male, very cancelable and very hard to be recognized. So I want to make sure that he's known as Dominick LaRuffa Jr. and he gets every opportunity he can and is not held back by any stupid shit I may have done, or I may say here, or I may do in the future.
Telling his story about what it was like growing up in Besonhurst, Brooklyn. And right now we're talking about the crack epidemic.
Crap is actually good too.
Yeah, the crack epidemic that took hold in Besonhurst in the 80s. And he made a reference because I said Planet Rock was one of their the Italian neighborhood cuisines and otherwise loved the song Planet Rock. And he said, stop. Yeah, he made a reference to something that I think only that neighborhood or culture did, which was kick dancing. Sally, I don't know if you know about kick dancing. It was like their own form of break dancing. Right. And I seen guys do it in Shallow at like one of the school dances, and I was like, what the fuck are they doing? Skippy went flying. They used to wear the pants with that one stripe that oh Jesus.
And the stripe up the side of the Smith's pants.
Yeah, dude.
We were so bad with that. We used to keep the white sponge shoe polish in our pockets to make sure that the skippies were always ultra white.
Yo, that is crazy.
You know what though? You say about the Italian thing, and it's funny because when you go back to saying the blending in the neighborhood, so right around that same time, or maybe slightly before that, I'll say like 81, 82, 83, is when, let's say, the crossover started to happen. And it's funny that you mentioned the music, because that's when they used to have the breaking crews or the rocking crews. So like there was like one of the ones that was, let's say, famous on Brooklyn terms was the Romantic Rockers out of like, you know, the Coney Island, like Holloway Avenue area. Like, you know, Little Macho and Gigi and Caballo and Sean and all those kids. And I was friendly with a lot of them through sports because I always played PAL, baseball, and other things. But when the Spanish and black breakdancing influence started to blend in, and all of the white Italian girls wanted to date all of the Spanish and black guys, that's when shit really got like, wow, like what's going on here? You know, like this is, you know, and listen, I don't want to open up cans or say things or whatever, but that's just the reality. The reality is that it was a thing, you know? Yeah. And when you say like things that learn and shape you and whatever. So all those kids that I just mentioned, there was a few other ones. And I know this is a platform where we could be free and not be judged. So one of the kids was this kid, Sean. And Sean, at 14 years old, looked like Apollo Creed. Like he took off his shirt and like the other 14-year-olds just ran for cover and said like, who is this man that they shrunk down into a 14-year-old body? And Sean was from the Marlboro Projects, which Marlboro Projects in Besonhurst might as well have been like, you know, like Egypt and Okinawa. Like it might as well have been like, you know, two completely different places. So, and I was cool with all of them. I was cool with Sean. I was cool with all these guys. So Sean starts dating a Italian girl, and I made the mistake of having a 13, 14-year-old chip on my shoulder, you know, and going to her and saying, oh, you know, how can you do this? Blah, 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 blah. You know, and I'm, you know, referring to it as, you know, Sean the N-word, Sean the N-word, Sean the N-word, you know, nigga this, nigga that, nigga this, nigga that. This girl goes and tells him. Like this girl goes and says, you know, Dominick came at me and said this, that, you know, whatever. So he walks into PS200, and it was like you heard like the outlaw Josie Wales music in the background, and I knew I was in trouble, and I knew there was nothing close enough for me to pick up and hit him with, and there was no way I was holding my own with this kid. I wasn't going to back down, but
And you wasn't gonna beat him in a race.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, Dom, did you really step in it here? So Sean walks in and he takes off his shirt, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going to go on here? So he says to me, I heard you said this, that, blah, 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 whatever. And just as I'm getting ready to come up with the ultimate denial story, like try to think of all of the things that she misheard.
There was no screenshots back then.
And I'm waiting for him to just like literally knock my head off my shoulders. And he takes a left turn and he gets like deep on me. And he goes, Dom, I thought you were different. I thought we were cool. I didn't think you were like these other fucking clowns and this, that, whatever. You really hurt me that you said those things. And I was like, I think he hit me harder by going in that direction than he would have hit me had he punched me in the face like I was expecting. Because in that moment, it flipped. Like I had a flash of humanity in that moment that I was like, wow, like this is like I said things that hurt him, that rocked him, that bothered him. Now, at the end of the conversation, he still smacked me really hard in my face, and I did nothing about it because I was literally shitting in my pants. Right. But it taught me a valuable lesson, and I realized at that moment that not only if you say things and you don't, they get back to the wrong people, that you're going to end up shitting your pants in the middle of PS200, but that it was different than just black white stuff like that. He looked at me as a friend, he looked at me as different, and I hurt him. So I could say from that moment on, not that, believe me, not that I've been perfect, and obviously when it comes to race and other things, it's a highly charged subject matter, but it made me realize that you need to be more responsible. You need to be more responsible with your words, and you need to see people as people. And I can tell you, like I want to hold the side of my face because I could still feel the smack. He smacked me so hard, but the mental and emotional touch was more than the smack. So I don't know whatever became of Sean. If by some crazy circumstance, him or his kids or somebody's watching this, Sean, thank you for teaching me a lesson. Thank you for smacking me, and thank you for letting me know that my words have my words and the hurtful things I say have power. And he taught me that lesson, and I can proudly say I carried that that similarity with my kids. They've always had friends of all different races, creeds, colors, religions, always blended in. And I thank him for it, because obviously, Besonhurst is infamous, especially for the Yusef Hawkins incident and all of the other things that happened, it gets a bad rap, because I'm not saying it wasn't true. And obviously they just had a documentary this summer that came out that you can't lie. You can't lie at the people in the street. You can't lie that they were tossing watermelons. You can't lie that someone tried to kill, I don't know if they tried to kill Al Sharpton, because like they basically stabbed him with a butter knife, but right. But it was highly charged. But I do think that it was it like anything else, and I'm not trying to pontificate here or take a different subject line, but it's really just based on ignorance and fear. Everything's based on ignorance and fear. You fear what you don't know, and obviously you're ignorant to the things that you don't allow yourself to learn. So I think Besonhurst, and I think the world in general started to come a long way, and then the events of the last couple of years have cycled things back. But for me,
John, I'm gonna stop you right there for a second. I want to jump in real quick.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. So, I'll just keep talking. So you got.
Last I heard, Sean opened the Bojangles down in Georgia. But nah, I off of what you're saying, I kind of get what you're saying, Dom. Like, not saying there's not racism. Racism's everywhere, man.
Right.
Racism's everywhere, and I think people like having conversations like this, and what Sean had with you back then is what really needs to be done. Like, speak about it. Let's talk about it. You know, this is how I feel. This is how you feel, and maybe we could move past it, right? But Hispanic community, there's racism towards each other. You know, Dominicans hate Puerto Ricans hate this one. You know, so just people saying that no racism doesn't.
I want to throw into the equation that I'm 1/8 Portuguese. So I can go in a lot of different directions. My ethnic blend is Portuguese, German, Irish, and Italian. So
right.
Why the fuck you lying?
Yeah, no.
He says Native Americans too trying to get that tax.
Yeah. I think Selly is touching on something that I've constantly thought about as well, because the reality, as I understand it, is, first of all, humanity, all of the human race started in one place, and if nobody knows where it started,
the cradle of life in Africa. Basically.
Exactly. Okay.
And they've gotten so good with DNA.
Exactly.
That virtually it's traced down to like 4 descendants.
Exactly.
Out of Africa.
So
and that's a fact.
Right.
Whoever wants to deny it is fine. It's a fact.
Right. So with that said, I think my overall point to what you said and what Selly added is that we need to be able to have these conversations like we're having now, being able to speak about things openly, right? Because I wouldn't have guessed in a million years that you would come on the show and openly tell that story, right? But the bottom line is, the more honest and open we are with each other, we begin to make headway and understanding for one another, because we're not children. We're adults, we're men, and we're supposed to lead. And the only way you can lead is by example. And if we don't have these conversations and we continue to shun each other, we're never going to learn, right? We can hang together or we can hang separately, but we're going to hang, period.
I'm with you. Now, Selly will I don't want to say validate this, but he'll bring us back to a memory. So I had collaborated with Selly and Ox and I call him Charlie Brown. You guys call him Joe Estrella. But we had a bunch of us had collaborated on a white party that was a Latin night in Legacy nightclub. What was it, Selly? About 11 years ago?
About 11, 12 years now.
So Legacy was the genesis of Pastels became Legacy, then it became Capri, then it became Sweet. And I'm pretty sure that Selly and Charlie and Ox, I think they brought me in as the conduit to, the white gangster types that had, were the proprietors of that establishment, Yeah. And so we come in there literally, and we were all friends one way or the other, but none of us had ever worked together before or done anything together. And now the club is closed, and obviously it was a legendary club. But that night, that separate Friday night white party, really was like a one-night legend. We packed that place, and it was let's say mostly Spanish, Dominican. Let's call it non-white. Right. I'm pretty sure I was the only white person.
It was an all-white affair.
It was the all-white affair that was no whites. And basically it was a great night. We showed that the community could support something like that. Unfortunately, it was a one night only and a one-off, but we collaborated, we ran a great event, we brought in other promoters, we did other things, and it was really a great night. And like little silly moments like that, like I was really so proud of and so happy to not only be part of it with them, but to show that you can take basically an all, let's say, predominantly Spanish and Black crowd, put it in what's known to be, a very tribal environment, in the middle of Bay Ridge, and literally have no incident. There was one little thing where some like half a clown that had like a minute as a Fat Joe wannabe rapper, came in and started like some little scuffle, and we squelched it right away. Right. But it was just like little things like that. You say to yourself, you know, it shouldn't be such an anomaly that you can take, you know, communities and blend them together. You could take things and blend them together, and everybody's guilty of this. It's not just it's not just a white thing that's guilty, because like you said, within your own, call it Hispanic or Latino community, there's those subdivisions. You know, within the Black community, there's subdivisions. But, and I don't want to become too political on this, but it's a charged subject. You know, the bottom line is that we allow ourselves to be divided, this divisive environment. We allow ourselves to be divided by, like, the Plymouth Rock white people that have been doing this from the beginning. You know, they've created a culture of chaos where they creatively pit us all against each other so they can control government and banking and global environments. And you know, and I know this sounds ultra simplistic and maybe even a little Pollyanna-ish on my part, but the greatest fear is, their greatest fear is the Latino, the Black, and the white, let's say, community coming together and literally doing like a Wizard of Oz moment where you pull the curtain back, you know, and Whitey behind it goes, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Because that's all this is. It's all a scam. It's all a scam. And I know it sounds like it's way too easy of an explanation, but it is. The moment, and I don't know when that moment will happen. For all I know, it's happening as we speak in little places. But the moment we realize that it's really all of the, let's say, you know, working class or middle class or the people that actually make the country run that really control all the power. You know, and I'm not, again, I have no formal education and I'm not necessarily a numbers guy, but when do we wake up and say, how are we going to continue to allow 540 people to make the rules for 300 million? 540 corrupt, very white, very despicable people. And whatever Black and Spanish people they bring along the way to become congressmen and senators and say, oh, no, this is how it works and this is what we do. And this 540 makes the decisions, and those 300 million are going to dance when we say dance. They're going to fight when we say fight. They're going to cry when we say cry. They're going to beg when we say beg. Like, I've never understood the scenario of how, 300 million ants could beat up 540 people. You know,
the reality is,
when do we wake up? When do we realize that?
This is the Roman, for me, no side eye, no swipe, but this is the Roman Empire all over again. And
I agree.
Yeah, I really don't.
Everything's cyclical.
Yeah, of course. And I don't think that people really pay attention, which Selly and I have conversations on the show, and I constantly say, you guys have to start paying attention to what's happening around you, and nobody gets it. You know, people will say, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist," and it's right there for you to see. It's right in front of your face. It happens every day.
The problem is that the truth and honesty require complete vulnerability, and virtually no one is willing to make themselves completely vulnerable, because a certain number of people are going to have to take the hits to create this society that we're talking about. But you also have to be resolute in saying there's not enough jails. They can't jail everybody. They can't arrest everybody if we stand up and say no more. You know, and believe me, I'm not trying to give a rah-rah speech, but that's really what it comes down to. Like in the subprime lending crisis, and obviously it was at the beginning of social media, I probably would have gotten arrested, because if there was a social media platform, I would have been going ballistic, because my thing was saying, okay, whatever month you want to pick, May, June, July, just simply say, we're not paying our mortgages anymore, or we're not making our car payment anymore. Just stand together and say that. Watch how quickly things change. But and you know what? In that instance, yeah, I don't know a number. 10,000 people, 15,000 people, 50,000 people. They might have to lose their house. They might have to go. People don't realize that you can learn everything from history. So the American Revolution, it was only 10% of the population that believed that what the framers and the founding fathers were saying. Only 10% that said, screw you, we're going to throw this tea in this harbor, no taxation without representation. It was only 10%. So you think if 30 million people, 10% of the United States population right now said, fuck you, no more, that you wouldn't very quickly get government to start listening? You absolutely would. And it's got nothing to do with white, black, Spanish, gay, LGBTQ, LMNO, PRST. It has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with the ruling class that basically has been the American aristocracy since Plymouth Rock. And it really changed when the five families, and not the mafia five families, the five families, the Rothschilds, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the Schwabs, and the Morgans, decided to create the Federal Reserve and decided to globalize and fuck every last one of us. That's exactly
what they're doing. Going back to your, like you said, the division, people keep, Republican, Democrat. Guys, they're both shit. Like,
so you and I have had this exact conversation separately on text or on social media when we said when they talk about left wing, right wing, same corrupt fucking bird. Doesn't matter. It's all the same bird. There is no wing. You got to get rid of the whole bird. You got to cut the head off. You got to get rid of the whole bird. And the only way that happens, and I'm not advocating for violence, although sometimes it's necessary, we have to figure out a way collectively to impose term limits on the Congress and the Senate. If you impose term limits, you could create change. If you don't impose term limits, all that's going to happen, whether it be the left wing, the right wing, the far radicals, the this, the that, the whatever else, whoever's in power is going to become corrupted. They're going to control all of the power, and it becomes a generational business where these people serve for 40, 50, 60 years.
And no job performance review, nothing.
Nothing. Think about it. Think about it. No, so, and I know it's ultra simplistic to say meritocracy, but like outside of being a meteorologist, a congressman and a senator is the only person that never has to get anything right.
Yeah, very much so. Can fuck up as long as they have the support of their district and or state, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter.
But I think there is a little bit of an awakening happening right now, and I'm not talking again. I'm not going to ever allow myself to be pulled into left, right, Democrat, Republican. I think what this imposed pandemic opened people's eyes to is that they realize that it's not the president doesn't matter. Maybe even the governor doesn't matter. What matters is the school board, the council members, the assemblymen, the local people. Those are the people that really impact your community. Those are the people that really make the decisions. And if you look around, like let's say Sunset Park, Besonhurst, whatever these areas, you look in like the same person that was an assemblyman or a councilman or a congressman when I had the coffee can trying to get money to go play sports at the on a travel team is still the same person. How is that possible? How could that person still be effective? There's no scenario. There's no job in the world where you could be in something for 40 years other than Tom Brady quarterbacking and still be the best or still be effective.
Well, you know what, Dom, I'm glad you brought that up, and Sully, I'm sure you probably with me on this one. I want to switch up gears and talk about your sports.
Yeah, I saw with my dear friend Charlie Brown, Joseph Estrella just put up talk about sports and the transition.
Yeah, I am.
He just wants us to bring his name up.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about.
You know what though? You got to give a lot of love to that man. You really do. He's a true Renaissance man. He's crazy, but he's a true Renaissance man. Highly intelligent. I love him. Like you said way back, that everyone who met him fought with him first, not me, because he was a competitor and then a teammate.
Right.
But you got like so many people, you started something argumentative with him and then became his friend.
Oh no, for sure. We grew up like 5 blocks away from him, and we was like, we hate this motherfucker. And then you start listening, and he starts, you play with him, and he starts teaching you shit, and you're like, oh, this motherfucker knows what he's talking about. All right, never mind.
I very affectionately refer to him as, remember the brother Michael on Good Times, the militant young brother Michael. That's that, and I mean it with the most affection and reverence. My militant brother, I love you.
So Dom, how do the football leagues start to shape your understanding and your experiences and you as a young man? Because I've played with Selly in Diker Heights, and we played in the Dust Bowl, and I've seen.
Now you went to school in Diker also, right? You went to Diker Junior High School?
We went to Shallow.
Oh, you went to Shallow. Okay, but same thing. You still quote unquote came into Besonhurst for junior high school.
Yeah. So, you venturing off into football and playing in these leagues, like, how did that affect your perceptions of people? And how did it shape you as you started to get older?
It's funny. It's actually a great question. And it's not dissimilar to when I started to allude before of how the romantic rockers and breakdancing influenced the Italians. The sports thing, like Diker, let's say initially, I don't want to say it was very white, but it was very white. Like basically, like when I first started playing in Diker, like, the guys had on tremendous athletes. I mean, some, especially on the concrete when they, the all out hitting on the concrete, but, it was jeans, with sneakers and tucked in shirts. It was a complete, like if you looked at it, you'd say these guys are athletes. I mean, meanwhile, they were killer athletes. But what started to happen was when these recreational football leagues started to take over what we'll call South Brooklyn, basically everything up from Carroll Park all the way through Besonhurst. There was little small leagues that had formed, and then there was the Diker Park League, which was, let's call it like the elite league, so to speak, or like that was the one that everyone aspired to be in. What started to happen was other teams from other neighborhoods started to come into the Diker League, and we started to go into these other neighborhood leagues, like the Dust Bowl, Rubens League downtown, Farragut Road, like these other places that, and I know to maybe an outsider that thinks, well, it's all Brooklyn. Someone who didn't grow up in those neighborhoods doesn't know that like 4 blocks was a different country. It was like, even in Besonhurst, it would be like 19th Avenue and 20th Avenue, might as well have been separated by the Rio Grande. It was like you didn't realize how sectional it was. But I'll try to stick to the topic. So with the blending, I can only go from my personal experience. So the only way I would have become friends with Selly, with Coco, with Baby, with Charlie, with all the guys on the Homeboys, was through football. There was no way that friendship was going to cross over because everything was very, compartmentalized. All the neighborhoods, had their own sections, their own things, their own whatever. So there would have been nothing that blended these worlds together. And what started to happen was, as the the quote unquote, we'll throw political correctness aside, as the Black and Spanish teams started to come in, like one of the first non-white superstar players in Diker was this kid Wendell. And he played on the Muggers. Now, the Muggers were a bunch of small, fast, crazy Italian kids from Avenue U. So Wendell, coming on their team was like, where'd this kid come from? And Wendell was a tremendous athlete, like 6'1", 6'2", gifted athlete. And let's just say had the skill set, of a highly evolved, gifted Black athlete that a lot of the white teams didn't have, And he basically
the secret weapon,
and changed the scope. So as we started to go play in these other neighborhoods and the teams started to blend, it made it better. It changed the game. The game became faster. The game became more, one-on-one defenses, less zones. It kind of became the best of both worlds. But what was amazing about it was we just all embraced each other, because on the field, it was all about meritocracy. It was all about if you could play, if you can get along, if you had respect for each other. And like, we rarely, if ever, fought interracially, meaning like there were no big white team, black team fights. There were no big white team, Spanish team fights. There was big fights, Spanish. There was big fights, black. Right. Like those guys had legendary ass kickings with each other. Like, it was really strange because those leagues were very physical, very, very physical. And it almost never became a black-white fight or a white-Spanish fight. It was like this: the Spanish fought among the Spanish, the blacks fought amongst the blacks, and the whites fought amongst the whites. But we didn't fight each other when we played ball together. So for me, it was like, why should this not be able to carry over into every other aspect? Like, why can't we go to the same clubs together? Why can't we open businesses together? Why can't we have recreational leagues together? Why can't our kids play together? And I guess now that we're having this conversation, I have to take accountability for maybe not realizing it or wanting to do more to try to make that happen, because maybe with having the platform of the chicken stores and the other things, maybe I could have been more of a positivity of figuring out a way to blend these things together. But if all of the 40 and 50 and some 60-year-old somethings that may be listening to this now that all played those things together, I'm going to throw out a challenge. I'm going to throw out an overall challenge and just say, if we all played together, if we all respected each other together, if we all, had complete meritocracy and complete inclusion on the field, where is everybody now? People have businesses, people have jobs, people have evolved to, supervisors and bosses on sanitation, on FDNY, on NYPD, on other things. I'll throw out an overall challenge to everybody. Just include one other person. Just do something to say, what are you guys doing? Where are your kids? What are you doing this weekend? Can we go out to dinner together? Can we see each other? That's how it starts. And then we start having conversations like this, and then things like that start to happen. The government's not going to solve our problems. The business of the government is to make sure we stay divided. The only way we're going to solve anything is if we start talking to each other.
No, for
That's
sure.
part of the problem. And listening to everything that he's saying, it makes me think, was Wendell looked at as, he's one of the good ones? Was Wendell coming to the neighborhood like on the weekend, like, we're going to hang out, we're just going to have some beers and walk around the neighborhood? I think that's all a part of the problem. And what it goes back to is this issue and how we deal and see and view race is part of America's DNA.
You're right.
Even though we can be friends on the football field, and even though we may crack jokes, and even though when things change is when who we really are comes to the surface. So if I come to the neighborhood, your other friends may not know me, and I may be walking back to the train station. They'd be like, "Hey, what the fuck are you doing in my neighborhood?" Or if I'm going to the store and I just happen to see your girl cousin, and I'm like, "Hey, Jeannie, how you doing?" Hey, we're friends, but don't talk to my. But
I like the accent you put on.
No, but that's the reality, right?
Right, but remember also, and I'm not looking to be confrontational with you, because I'm with you. Believe
this is reality,
right? But understand that also goes for the other communities that, quote unquote, the white people go into, or even among the Hispanics, where let's just say the Dominicans don't necessarily want their sister dating a Puerto Rican, or the Puerto Rican doesn't want necessarily their sister dating a Guatemalan. You know what I mean? Like it's you know what I mean? Like it's
for sure.
when you say it's in our DNA, and I don't know
All of
the
us.
right term, but I know what you mean, because you actually really opened my eyes a couple of weeks ago when we were talking off, not this, I think it was maybe right after Whip was on, and I had said, I don't see color. And you stopped me and you said, no, you shouldn't say that, because, part of, you have to see color in order to recognize what's up and what's going on and make the changes. Say that you go content of character. Say that you judge the person on their merits. And you know what? I've probably said that I don't see color line 1,000 times in my life. And no one's ever said it to me the way you did. And I thank you for that, because it's resonated with me from that moment on, because that's even an offensive thing to say. Because it's like saying I don't see color is almost like me saying I don't see you.
Exactly. Exactly.
You are of color. That's the first thing. It's the first thing you come into the world with, and it's the first thing anyone's going to recognize about you. So I need to embrace it, because I need to know that there are differences, not in how I'm going to judge, but there's differences in how you came into the world, how you engage the world, what happens, how the world engages you. I'll tell you a quick story. So, and I'll leave names out of it. A gentleman came to play on the Homestretch. Incredible athlete. Black gentleman from the Marlboro Projects. At first, we didn't even pay him any mind. He was hanging around the sidelines. One day he comes on our team. He starts playing. What a game changer. I mean, this guy was unbelievable. He was an unbelievable guy. He was an unbelievable athlete. He was an unbelievable everything. At the time, everyone came to me for a job to deliver in the chicken store, So, he had a young daughter at the time, and he was very responsible. Like a lot of us, we're young, we're stupid. You got problems with baby mama. You make bad decisions, whatever. And he was trying to work his way through it, so he starts driving deliveries in the chicken store. I get called to a local social club, let's say essentially to a sit down, because I had a nigger driving deliveries for me. And I can't have a nigga delivering chicken in Besonhurst. And I shit you not, this was a real thing.
Right.
And I was in a precarious spot, because Besonhurst circa 1989, 1990. And I know every time I say 1990, right away in my head I hear Chub Rock jumps upon the scene looking lean with a pocket full of green. I just have to say that in my head every time I say 1990. But 89, 90 was still the crossover of that. So and I said, and I'm not making up folklore. I basically said, listen, a version of you do what you got to do. This is a friend of mine. I play ball with him. He lives across the street from L&B Pizza. It's not like I didn't bring him here from Zimbabwe.
Right.
He lives straight down 86th Street, even before you get to McDonald Avenue. And he's my friend. He needs the money. He's going to continue to drive, and I'll take basically whatever comes the way.
Responsibility.
So this was it was like a real thing that was going on at the time. And I truly don't know who went to this friend of mine and explained to him what has just transpired and what went down. And just to show you his character, he came to me and he said, listen, Dom, I appreciate you. I appreciate you as a friend. I appreciate what you've done here, but I can't stand in the way of your business or threats or, you having a problem in your community or with your people or whatever. And I'm paraphrasing. I forget exactly how he said it. But he said, he stuck out his hand. He goes, I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity. You'll always be aces in my eyes, but I'm going to officially resign and I'm going to relieve you of the burden. So and I said to him, I really want you to stay. Like, I want you to do this. Like, it's important. And in a way, I have to say, with remorse, I thank him, because I I was probably minutes away from like my windows getting broken and other things starting to happen and more aggressive action being taken, or worse, something happening to him while he was delivering, which would have been worse on my part.
Right.
So to save the neighborhood, that was still the neighborhood mentality, but it wasn't my mentality. But in a way, I guess I allowed it to be my mentality, because I allowed it to transpire. I allowed him to resign, and I kind of just went on, with my day, so to speak. And it made me love him even more. And if he happens to be listening, you know who you are. I love you. You're great. I've lost contact with him. I have no idea where he is, but he was a great guy. And and I could have done more. But with the back to the sports thing and the blending, it's weird, because now, like, he thought, or maybe he was just being a good friend to me. But whatever it was, he said, okay, I dipped my foot in the water. Besonhurst isn't ready for me yet, or this section of Besonhurst isn't ready for me yet. I'm going to go back, to where I'm comfortable, or I'm going to go back to where I'm not making waves, or I'm going to go back to where I'm not a problem. And and I guess shame on me to a degree for not doing more about it, but also, shame on all of us that he had to feel compelled to make that decision as well.
Well, I remember playing you guys, Dom, and I was a guy that told the line, so I had to make sure if I was going to cheap shot somebody, I wasn't getting cement shoes after. So, but hopefully those guys changed their mentality over the years.
Yeah, I think they did. But going back to what Mr. Estrella, the question he posed, and again, he's one of my dearest friends on the planet. There's no way, or maybe the universe would have had a plan anyway. But if we don't first play against each other and then become teammates, I don't have that experience, and I don't have that friend. And then he, myself, and Butchie, who was our quarterback, we got recruited by the Homeboys after we had beaten them in back-to-back seasons and back-to-back championships in Rubens League, that league that played in the park behind the Dust Bowl, and the other one across, that little concrete park.
Yeah.
And I think I sent you a picture of some of the championship jackets. So I have the Homeboys jacket, and I won a championship with the Homeboys. And Butchie and I always used to joke and say, like, we're the reverse Jackie Robinsons of the local football, because we went to the Homeboys and won a championship, But it was like, even with that, and the guy that ran the Homeboys was a guy named Doc, and he worked for the MTA, and he also was involved with the sneaker store down on Nostrand Avenue. And when he passed away, they did a big memorial for him in Flatbush. And it was a Saturday afternoon. They had a DJ. They had a whole thing and whatever. And this is, I guess, about 11 years ago. And I was just starting to date my now fiance that I'm together with. And she went to Lafayette. She grew up in the neighborhood. So she wasn't a stranger, so to speak. Like, she wasn't some white bread girl from Connecticut. But I said, we were on our way out to Long Island. I said, hey, they're having a memorial for a friend of mine, blah, 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 whatever. And I didn't say black homeboy, this, that, whatever. I just said, they're having a memorial for a friend of mine. I want to stop by. So we went and we parked, about a block and a half away, because it was standing room only. And literally, there was a couple of lighter-skinned Hispanics. But other than that, it's me walking with Faye Ray down the block, and and she's getting, like, I feel her squeezing my hand. I said, we're good. I said, believe me, we're good. We're fine, And fortunately, like, some faces recognized, and Charlie, Joe was there and brought me over, and the other guys were there. And, it was just, it was one of those days where you say, not only was I privileged and so glad to be there and honored to be there, but again, it was another moment where I said to myself, where so many people interacted back and forth on his job in the sneaker store. Like, it wasn't just exclusive to black people. He didn't just work in the MTA with black people. He didn't just sell sneakers to black people.
Right.
Why was there so few white people?
Doc was the biggest one.
The big one. Yeah, big both ways.
Doc,
well, Juicy technically was the biggest one.
right.
Juicy
That was the
was like
skinniest soul.
6'6", 6'8", and he's actually the one that went to Europe to play basketball for a while. Like, Juicy used to literally like jump out of the park.
Jump out the sky.
Unbelievable athletic.
Juicy, Doc, John. But Doc was the first guy I ever hit that didn't budge and made me feel like shit.
Yeah, well, Doc was like Shaq. Like,
Yeah.
Doc was athletic. Doc had to be 300 pounds or more. I mean, he was a beast.
Rock.
Hold on. I gotta turn the knife, and we're gonna close the show out here. All right.
Yikes.
I wanna ask a question. Selly, how did you guys beat the Homeboys in the chip in 65th Street?
I don't remember, honestly. It was just.
Well, you're talking about us with the Homestretch, how we beat them, or
No, because in Ruben's league, we played them in the chip.
And which team? Were you with the Hurricanes, or which team were you with?
No, we were the G-Men.
Oh, okay. So was that after we stopped playing?
Yeah, I think Junior was their quarterback.
Yeah,
Junior was their quarterback.
That long-haired football dude that used to throw darts.
Junior.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually he was a teacher or a professor at Brooklyn College.
Yes.
Because I used to go there to play pickup basketball with him and a bunch of other guys, and he used to have the gym on a Saturday. So we used to go there, and we used. Yes, I did play basketball at my diminutive height. I did play basketball. I was like the white Muggsy Bogues.
Actually, we didn't beat them. I was the Bengals that beat them.
Who did we play in the chip that year that I broke my leg?
Wolverines.
It was the Wolverines?
Yeah.
How did they beat the Homeboys?
We beat Joe Estrella.
Yeah, we beat. That's right. You're right. You're right.
Who was the quarterback for the Wolverines?
Jason
not
Sebastiano.
Eddie Hernandez.
Yeah, no.
Jason Sebastiano.
Oh, okay, because Eddie Hernandez had the Bronco jersey. They had the orange jerseys, right?
No, that was Lefty Eddie. Yeah.
He was a lefty. He was a lefty.
Yep.
He was very good. That team was very good.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah, but the Homeboys we beat. It was back-to-back undefeated seasons.
Wow.
And in Ruben's league. And both times came down to like almost the final play. And both times we got assy lucky. Like, it was absolute ass luck.
Right.
Because there were other championships where we won by, a runaway. Those Homeboys championships, it was like which way the ball was going to bounce on the last.
There was
play.
no defense. It was
but especially in that league, it was just a scoring barrage. Right. The whole field was less than 50 yards.
Right.
The field was probably like 40 yards.
Yeah, we had Moro, Pepe, and Milo actually on our quarterback rotation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you just brought in everybody.
yeah. I was the Yankees that year. I was signing every free agent.
Well, see, so I know you said you want to close out the show, and I'm sorry if I took up too much time.
No.
But that was another thing too. Like, when I want to give Charlie Estrella, Joseph Estrella, his just due for not only being wonderful but asking a great question. So what started to happen with that was. And this happened amongst, let's say, the quote-unquote Diker teams also. As the other leagues started to spawn off, that's when the blending started to happen. Like, we were bitter rivals, let's say, with Nicky Boy and the Muggers. Mm-hmm. And as you know, Nicky Boy is one of probably top 5 best athlete that ever played in those leagues.
For sure.
But when we would go now and play in Gerritsen Beach, or we would go and play in other leagues, they'd come and play with us. So we'd get Whip, we'd get Nicky Boy, we'd get Jimmy Milo, like we'd get other teams. So so Diker always stayed, like, you stayed with your friends and your team, your real core.
Right.
But the other leagues started to become like this eclectic mix of people. The only
integrated.
But the only team that integrated in Diker was us. Like, basically, and again, that's how I initially met Joe and Coco and Angel, and rest in peace, our dear friend Eddie Leon, you know, all of the blending happened with that team because let's face it, it wasn't hard to get people to want to play for the Homestretch. And, you know, we went, it was like it happened in one season. We went from being prolific to being white and slow. And, you know, and you know, we had to bring in these people, you know, so all of a sudden it started to become, and again, it was great because, but it was that thing that you said before where everybody was friends on the field, but then no matter what, everybody went back to their habitat and, you know, and like we really didn't stay together. You know, we really didn't, you know, recreate together or whatever, you know, have beers together, go out together, go clubbing together, you know, whatever that may be. But this new level of divisiveness or divisiveness, it's almost like that was like almost like nostalgic division, like, you know, like traditional division.
Back to the roots.
What's that?
Back to the roots.
Right. This new division, I think, is even uglier because now it's just political party. You know, now it's just, and it's crazy. And like when the now president of the United States, when he was on the campaign trail, can outright say, you know, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, you know, and get away with it, you know, could say that and get away with it. Like, and I'm not saying that as an angry white person. I'm saying that as you can't insult somebody like that. Like, you know, you can't say, you know, if you're black, you don't get to make up your mind. You don't get to have an opinion. You don't get to think about anything. This is just the way you have to vote. And if you don't do it, you're giving up your black card. Like, how crazy is that?
Well, again, it's getting back to the roots because, as you're saying, you don't get to say that. But how many hundreds of years has this country actually said that?
Right. And you know what? It's deeper than that because we, like, I know not every white person, but let's just say a lot of white people, they'll want to say, you know, the Republican Party is was the party of Lincoln and it's the party that freed the slaves and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, both sides, the right and the left, have a wonderful way of taking a fact or a factoid and twisting it, really twisting it. So yes, there's no doubt that it was quote unquote the anti-establishment party at the time. It was a new party, and it's essentially the party that freed the slaves. But the North didn't really care about freeing the slaves. It was economics. The South had free labor, and the North paid for their labor. So the North was like, we got to get rid of this because we're all going to lose our businesses because you can't compete with free labor. So you want to say you freed the slaves, but then you didn't allow black people to own land, or you didn't allow black people to take out a bank loan, or you didn't allow these other things. So there's so much truth in the depth of hatred. But at the same time, you know, and I know it's easier for me to say because I appear to be sitting on the white side of the equation. And you can't say that, well, that was in the past, because it wasn't. You know, it's still happening now. But you just have to say that, yes, we've gotten a lot better, but we're a million miles away from where we can be and where we need to be. We have to stop resting on our laurels and say, oh, well, you know, how much better do you have it than you had it? Like, it's a horrible
statement.
You know, statement, and it's a horrible dish to feed somebody to say, oh, well, you know, I used to beat the shit out of you 7 days a week. Now I only beat the shit out of you 3 days a week. Aren't you happy? You know what I mean? Like you know, you can't say stuff like that. You know, so I do think that, listen, it gets really charged, you know, and I hate this one, that one, this one, that one. The bottom line is there's always been race as a quotient of it, but what we have to realize is that race has now blended into economic class. It's not just, you know, a black or Spanish thing anymore. It's truly the haves and the have-nots. And the whites that think that they're in a better position, because they're white, they're fooling themselves. It's things are trending in a very, very bad direction. But at the same time, if you're white and you don't realize that I don't want to say white privilege, but there's definitely things that white people don't have to face that black people have to face. There's
White
no
privilege.
doubt.
It's white privilege. You have to call it what it is. It is.
Yeah,
It's white
but the thing is that I say that it's definitely an existing concept. I don't know if privilege is the right word, but at the same time, I'll say that you have to acknowledge that there's a different set of standards for white people. There always has been. I don't want to say there always will be. And I'll tell you another anecdote real quick. So in addition to the chicken stores, I had a small chain of tanning salons at the same time also. And one of my tanning salons was on Avenue N and right off the corner of Ralph Avenue. And that was, Canarsie and Old Mill Basin was starting to become a very blended neighborhood, especially that area. So across the street from the tanning salon was a convenience store, stereotypically owned by
Muhammad.
the immigrants that own all the 7-Elevens. And one day, so and I really wasn't a member of that community because, I had the tanning salon there. My house at the time was in Bergen Beach. I was very entrenched I had full custody of my kids. I was running my businesses. So I had a lot of blinders on about a lot of things. So I go one day across the street to the convenience store as the bus is letting out. Not the school bus, because as you know, in the city, there's really not school buses. Kids take buses. And there's, all the kids are being released off the bus and going. And I go to the convenience store and there's a lineup outside the convenience store. And it's about 8 or 9 kids deep. And I go to walk in. I figured the store's packed. So I was just going to walk to the next available place, which was 2 blocks away. But out of the corner of my eye, I see there's hardly anybody in the store. So I walk in, I thought maybe something might have been going wrong or whatever. So I walk in, and there's a guy behind the counter, a proprietor, and 2 other guys in the store. And they only let 2 black kids in the store. And they're walking around the store watching these 2 black kids buy their stuff and go and pay for it. And the 8 or 9 black kids are waiting outside for their turn to be let in 2 at a time to be walked around. And at first it didn't click for me. I didn't know what I was seeing. And then I immediately became furious. And I was what's going on? If there was 10 white kids from Mill Basin that walked in here, would you be letting them in 2 at a time? This is what I'm saying in my mind. So I go outside and I say to the kids, come inside with me. The 8 or 9 kids that were there. And they looked at me like I had 11 heads. I don't know if they thought I was a cop. I don't know what they thought it was. I said, come inside with me. And they reluctantly started to come with me. And the guy, I said, these guys, let's just say the guys that were there knew I was from across the street. They kind of knew me in the neighborhood a little bit. I said, these kids are with me. They're coming in here, whatever. They come in. I say, guys, get anything you want. Don't steal it, but get anything you want. And they go and they get it and they put it on the counter. It came out to $40, $50, whatever. I paid for it and I walked outside with them. So I said to them, I said, listen, I want to try to teach a lesson. And to their credit, they will engage. So it's about 11 kids now, middle school kids, 6th grade, maybe 7th grade. And I said, I really don't know what to say right now. I'm embarrassed as a human being that not only are you being subjected to this, but that you thought that this is what you need to do. You just obediently were waiting outside online. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I don't want to send a mixed message here. But this, you can't allow yourself to be treated this way. I said, you see this? And I took some money out of my pocket. I said, this is the power that you have. Ultimately, This is you're the consumer, you're the person making the purchase. This gives you the ultimate power, whether it's this store or any other store. If you go somewhere and they send you in with a chaperone, or you go somewhere and they make you feel violated, they make you feel like they're watching you, take your money and go to another store, and keep going to another store until you find someone that appreciates that you're willing to spend your money in their store. And like, I remember, and I don't know if my son's watching the show or not, because he was a middle school kid also, and he was living with me at the time. That's when I had first gotten custody of him. And I went home and told him the story, and like, I got really emotional. Like, I was crying as I was talking to him, because I'm like, is this what goes on? Like, is this what your friends are subjected to? Because again, he had friends of, all, ethnic backgrounds. And I just couldn't believe. I was more disturbed by the fact that those young African-American young men thought that this was the way they needed to interact with the world. And also, what were we fostering when they figured it out? Like 3, 4, 5, however many years down the road, when they remembered how mistreated they were, you basically just guaranteed you have a whole nother set of people that are going to say, that are going to have that racially motivated attitude. And they're right. Look how they were treated, And I know this may be a long-winded story, but what I'm saying to you is that, like, this is 2000. Like, it was definitely before 9/11, because it was the first year my son was living with me. And I'm like, how fucking blind am I that this is going on in the store right across the street from me in plain sight, and everybody just thinks it's normal? So when you say white privilege, I'd rather call it white blindness or white ignorance. I don't know. I guess privilege goes along with it, but privilege sounds like something you're not going to run to correct. Ignorance, sounds like something you're not going to want to be called. So, like, if you look at it more as white ignorance, or, just white disgust, like, you got to come up with a term that makes white people not feel.
If we really want to make a dent into, like, racism and stuff like that, why don't we take it off all applications and start there?
Agreed.
Well, this is what I'm going to say. The reality is that race and racism is genetic when it comes to America. It's in everything we do. It's in everything that we discuss. It's in everyday life. If you go to the bank, if you apply for a job, if you go to the DMV, if you go to school, they constantly ask you for your race. It's just a part of who this country is, and it's baked into the system. It's up to the people, regular folk, regular everyday folk, to see each other, welcome the differences, and start to act like adults and talk to one another. Because the more that we separate ourselves into these tags or labels, the further apart we're going to get. And I think that people need to start realizing, understanding that more and more, especially in this moment. Especially
but see, it's got to go beyond race, and I
of course,
you're 1,000,000% right. But the problem is that now, depending on what level of PC you subscribe to, there's as many as 200 different definitions of who and what you are, and that you know what I mean. And it's like we're trending in the other direction. Like, you say, you got to get race off the app, or you got to get race, like, off the thing, and I'm in complete agreement with you. But, like, you got to get, to a degree, you got to get everything off of it, because let's say if it's a job application, there should be
Dom,
things.
let me stop you, and I don't mean to do that, but let me stop you.
No, go ahead. I need to be stopped because I just talk too much.
This is the reality. What you and I are seeing are the same thing, because We can't even deal with each other as human beings, let alone the labels. I'm gay, I'm black, I'm a trans, I'm a Republican, I'm a a centrist.
I know it sounds like
Whatever.
a cliche, but there's only one race. There's the human,
No, exactly.
and
No,
that's
it's not
it.
okay. But what I'm saying to you ultimately is this is baked into the system, and it's how everybody deals and how everybody sees and responds and builds their understanding around. And what everybody has to do is step away from that. You can't keep picking up the mantle and expecting the same, the different outcomes. You have to put that shit down and start working from a place of just being a human being.
Right, but see, that goes back to what I said before about the 540 people controlling.
No, right.
And what
Like you
has to
said,
happen is
baked into the system.
right. You need to go out into your communities, and you need to start attending school board meetings and start attending town halls and start saying, who is the candidate? I don't care if it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever. Who's the candidate that's going to say, I'm going to make a decision that's in the best interest of my community? Every member of the community. Like, I don't, I wish I had the answer to that. I don't know where that starts. I don't know how that starts. Maybe it starts with a conversation like this. I don't know.
I want Dave Chappelle for president, Joe Rogan for vice president.
And The Rock for Minister of Defense. Ladies and gentlemen.
Who was the president, Sally?
I said Dave Chappelle for president, Joe Rogan as the vice.
I don't disagree with any of that right now. How do you like the Netflix owner, the CEO of Netflix, coming out and now backpedaling and saying he was wrong for defending Dave Chappelle?
That's a whole other episode.
See now, right? You know what though, and I know we went way over our time, but here's the thing. So, like, let's say what just happened with John Gruden, okay? And let's say, and 1,000,000%, guy should have lost his job, no questions asked. But now you're saying John Gruden was very cancelable because A, because he's white, and B, because he's just a football coach. Like Dave Chappelle actually represents like this unicorn, incredible blend that can truly cross every line. So, like, you want a Dave Chappelle to be out there saying these things, being controversial, calling the conversation to the middle of the table, because he checks all the boxes of being almost uncancelable. He's super famous. He's super wealthy. He's got, a tremendous following. He's got a tremendous audience. He's black. He's got the things that you could say, hey, you can't cancel me. You can't shut me down. Like we saw a glimpse of it with Nicki Minaj, and then they kind of, got rid of her, and it was like, I love what she did.
Going back to John Gruden real quick, he wasn't fired until, first of all, the lips like tires and all that. That kind of was like, all right, he still had his job. He coached that weekend. When the homophobic stuff came up and that kind of stuff, that's when it was like, all right, he's done.
Well, it's because, again, you start to go into the power lines and you start to say, like, who just got offended and who has the most power. The bottom line is, I don't want to use the word systemic because I know that's a polarizing word, but if the NFL went through 650,000 emails, and if they were going to be fair and share all of that, I guarantee you every single NFL team is for sale the next day, because every owner has said shit they shouldn't have said.
Oh, for sure. That's the
every
good old
GM
boys.
has said shit they shouldn't have said. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that invertedly where I think that's okay. What I'm saying is, again, if you're going to call shit out, call shit out. If you're gonna say things, call it out for what it is. But Chappelle, I'm praying. I'm literally like saying novenas with my old rosary beads that Dave Chappelle will find the platform that will allow him to be uncancelable, because we need somebody to be uncancelable. We need somebody to get, going back to what I said in the beginning, being vulnerable and being uncomfortable is the only way you can grow. And we need somebody like Dave Chappelle that has the ability to make us all vulnerable, uncomfortable, and call us out on our own shit. And I don't know if it's going to be him, but it sure as shit could be him. And I hope it is, because he really he could be that linchpin that starts to make a difference. But you're right.
Let's just go back to having fun and having comedy and everything not being just a damn cancellation. Like, fun is no good. Like, where did the fun police come from?
Yeah, and again, that's but again, part of that is all just, again, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, comedy is like it's comedy is a take on life. The most successful comedians are the ones that talk about just real life stuff and real life experience. And you have to find some levity and some humor in it. And comedians and rappers probably have the best handle on what's going on the ground in society. Because comedians walk around and observe to put together their rap, to put together their show, and rappers obviously. And when I say rappers, I mean true rappers, like our rappers, Mr. A, like true rappers, ones that literally, were a voice of people that didn't have a voice.
Wordsmiths.
Like Drake is not a guy I want being my voice.
Oh,
the kid from Degrassi is not the kid I want. Is not the kid being my voice. Not auto tuning my voice. Nas coming back out with the new album. Now we got something.
ladies and gentlemen, this conversation can evolve and grow and go on for another 4 hours. But what I want to say is we want to thank our brother, Mr. Dominick LaRuffa, for joining us, one. For two,
and remember, Delineate the Junior. My son's the Junior.
Delineate the Junior. And
which,
two,
by the way, he would be a great guest on your show.
We don't want to give it up, man. Come on, we got to talk about that another time. And two, we want to let Dom know that he's part of the family. If anything, we definitely want to get you on for a roundtable, because there's a couple of subjects that I want to.
Oh, that's offensive to square tables.
Yeah, right. we want to bring you on for a roundtable when we discuss some social issues, and then maybe bring you on for a chop it up segment where we talk current events. But we definitely want to thank you for giving up your time.
No, I appreciate it, and I'm really sorry if I
No. It's all good. We thank you for giving up your time, and we'll have you back, man. It was really good having you on the show.
I really appreciate it, and and if I could reverse plug you guys,
please.
For if there's I know there are people watching this for the first time simply because I'm on it, and I have white friends that would have never watched the show before that now are watching it, So what I want to say to them is your platform and your show, first of all, I love the fact that it's live, and truth be told, none of this was scripted. Like, we didn't even say what we were going to, right, guys? I mean, it was basically, hey, come on, let's shoot the talk, let's do this, let's whatever. I had no idea where this was going to go, but I want to tell anyone that's watching this, share, subscribe, ask your friends to subscribe to this channel, share this channel, because it's not always going to be racial issues or equality or inequality. But what's great about this show is that it could be anything. It could be anything. And going back to what you're saying about DNA, no matter what, blended into the show is going to be the fact that, non-traditional people are the founders and purveyors of this platform. So, that's the only way things are going to change, is if you throw out the traditional and bring in the non-traditional. So guys, anyone who's watching this that is a first timer, or anyone that came on this graciously, the 4 people who might have signed on just to watch me, please, your social media is very powerful. The platform is very powerful. You all have friends. You all share stupid shit all the time. Just share the link, share the show, tell your friends to listen, tell yourselves to go on. You know, I think it's great.
Mr. Dominick P. LaRuffa, thank you for your time, brother. We appreciate you.
No problem.
John, thank you,
Love
brother.
guys.
And let everybody know you're with me, right? You're with us. So you're good. You're
He's
good.
one of the good ones. He's one of the good ones.
I'm down with the 6145.
There you go, brother. There you go.
Appreciate you, man.
All right,
Thank you.
you got
Thank you so much, man. Woo. I'm gonna try to have dinner now at 9 o'clock.
Tasty chicken.
Man, listen, you was talking it up. I was like, damn, now I want to, you know, it's been years.
Yeah,
been
man.
years. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying on with us for so long. Next week we're gonna chop it up. Sally, we gotta talk about Chappelle, like we just talked about now.
Sure.
We gotta talk about Chappelle. We gotta talk
verses.
about
Verses.
Ooh, we gotta talk about that verses, man. That was something else. And you know what? I'm not gonna drag it out, but I'm gonna give a salute to Big Daddy Kane. I'll get into why, but I want to give him his flowers. Mm-hmm. He went in. I'm gonna say that. He went in. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And we'll be back next Wednesday. Make sure you look out for the updates for Just the Tip with Sasson. They'll be coming sporadically, but just pay attention. And like and subscribe, Just the Tip on YouTube. Like and subscribe and share. And also do the same for the set 6145. We appreciate you.
Thank
We're
you.
out of here, sir.
Let's go.
Let's go.